We've done a zillion of those. Remember before, though, when we did this problem, what was the question? What was the question we were always answering before when we did problems like this box problem? Find the maximum. Now they're saying, they're making it an inequality. They're saying we want the volume to be at least, that is greater than or equal to 977. So what would the equation for the volume of this box be? It's what we do, you know, we cut the corners out, fold up the flaps. So what's our length, width, and height going to be?
30 minus 2x.
30 minus 2x.
25 minus 2x.
25 minus 2x.
Times x.
Times x. So that's what we're solving. Now, what's our domain? What are our x's? Remember, we talked about this before. X is going to be between what and what? It's going to be, actually not a equal to, it's going to be between 0 and
977.
So what is it?
977.
No, we're talking about x now, not the volume. The volume's 977. That has nothing to do with x. 12.5. And why is it between 0 and 12.5? If you are going to take, your paper's only 25 wide, if you're going to take a chunk off both sides, it can't be bigger than 12 and a half. So what I would suggest you do, and of course there's always more than one way to do these problems, but you know from before that when you graph this equation on this domain, you're going to get something that looks like this, right? And before we were keying in on that point. Well, we're not anymore. We're going to graph the line 977. And then what would I be looking for? If I want my volume to be at least 977, and here's 977, what would I be looking for on that picture? Right here? So that's what we need to do. So we need to get this window put in. We need to graph that equation. Then we need to graph 977 and see if we can figure out where they cross. So put in your volume equation. And put in 977 as a separate equation. Put in your window. What should y min be? 0. What should y max be? We don't know, but it's got to be bigger than 977, right? I'm going to go ahead and put 1500 in and see what happens. 1500 works nicely. Did you get something that looked like this? Now, your job was to find what size should x be so that you are at least 977. You need to identify that point and that point. So you know how to do that, right? How do we find those points? Second calc intersect. We can only find one at a time. So I got about 1.7 here, did you? And I got about 8.1 on that side. So let me know if you match my x's there. All right, so read the question again. Let's make sure we answer it. Find the size of the corners that need to be cut. so that the volume is at least 977. So how are you going to answer that question?
Plug those points in.
Anything in between 1.7 and 8.1 will give me a volume of 977, right? Or higher. All of these are going to give me numbers bigger than 977. These give me numbers that equal 977. I want to be greater than or equal to. So I'm going to pick all those X's. Okay? Nothing different than what we did before, except before we wanted this point. Now we're looking for a particular value. What is the minimum area for a piece of paper? All right, so here's the piece of paper. It must contain 277 square inches of print material if the margins of the page. Okay, so this is the piece of paper, but we're only writing on part of it. This is the writing. And that has to be 277 square inches. We got 3 inches, 3-inch margin on the top, 2.5 inches on the left, 1.5 on the right, and the bottom. Thoughts? Let's forget the margins for a second and let's focus just on this print part right here. Do I know anything about either dimension?
No.
No, all I do know though is that if I multiply this times this, I get 277, right? So if I were to call this X, right here, if I call that X, what could I call this? And if you say Y, that's okay, but the key is X times Y is 277. So what would Y equal? What would Y actually equal? 277 over X. I really don't want two variables in here. I know that this times this has to give me 277. So if this is X, this is going to be 277 over X. So what is the entire width of the paper then? If this much is 277 over X, this right here, what would be the whole thing?
Plus 4.
277 over X plus what? 4. Don't you have 2.5 on this side and 1.5 on this side? Does that be plus 4? What would this be? I know this is X.
4.5.
Plus 4.5. Because you got 3 at the top and 1.5 at the bottom. So what is the area of the whole paper? The area of the whole paper is 277 over X plus 4 times X plus 4.5. Would you agree with that? And what do I want to know about that? What is the minimum area? So what could I do? This is the area. I want the minimum. So what could I do?
Graph
get my handy calculator out and look for what? We don't do this very often. What would we be looking for?
The minimum.
The minimum. You can go ahead and put that equation in just like it is. Probably have to play around with it a little bit. I actually left my window the same as it was for the last problem, except I had to change I changed X max to 50. Let me change it to 100 and see if that makes it more obvious. Yeah. I left my window the same as it was before, except I made X max 100 just by playing around with it a little bit. And I got a picture that looked like this. Did you? And you would be looking for this point right here, the minimum. We don't do that very often, but you know how to do it, right? Second calc, just choose minimum. And if you're having a hard time telling exactly where the minimum is, don't freak out. Set one bound over here and one bound over here. You know the minimum's in there somewhere. That's what's so nice about being able to set your bounds. You don't have to be able to see clearly where it is. You just have to know where the vicinity it's in. I got 17.65, 436.22. Anybody match that?
How did you plug it into your calculator? How did you write the equation?
Just like that,
Just like that?
with parentheses. I mean, I had the parentheses in there just like that.
So mine's more like going more like an asymptote. It's kind of,
Well, I don't know what your window is.
oh, okay.
If I set my X max at 100, and that stretched it out, and so I could see that little point in there.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so what was the question? What is the minimum area? So what will be the answer to the question here? What is the minimum area? 436. Yep. What's this number?
How much is cut off?
Well, that's not how much, we didn't do any cutting in this problem. We did any cutting. But that would be this dimension right here, right? That's X. So that would be if you wanted to know how the dimensions of the printed part, well, that would be 17.65, and then this would be 277 divided by that. Okay, easy enough. Number 3. Didn't we do these before?
No,
We didn't?
I don't think so. I read it, didn't I?
Okay, these are work problems, not work like you do in physics. There are other work problems in physics. These are like, we're just doing a job, and there's kind of a little general formula. You probably learned it when you were in first year algebra. 1 over a loan plus 1 over a loan equals 1 over together. So if you just remember that format, you can whip these guys out easily. Taylor can take his quiz in 14 minutes. 1 over 14. With Carly's help, they can do it in 10 minutes. 1 over 10, that's together. How long does it take Carly to do it by herself? So this is 1 over Taylor plus 1 over Carly equals 1 over together. Now, this is a rational equation, which we had some exercises a couple days ago, and there's excluded values. What's the excluded value here? 0. And we're going to solve it. How do you solve something like this?
Common denominator.
Multiply through by the common denominator. Now, if you want to make your life easy, you can just go ahead and use 140x as the common denominator. but actually the least would be 70x, but it doesn't matter. Multiply by whatever you want. If you want to multiply by 140x, that's absolutely fine. It makes canceling a lot easier. So this would leave me with 10x, right? Plus 140 equals 14x. So 4x equals 140 and x equals 35
Yeah.
minutes.
That makes no sense.
Okay, so let's do another quickly, since I thought we'd done these already. Let's do another one real quick. Let's say that, Hannah can do her homework in 2 hours, and Rose can do her homework in 3 hours. How long does it take them to do it together? Real easy. What's the setup? 1 over 2 plus 1 over 3 equals 1 over x. Multiply through by 6x. So 3x plus 2x equals 6. And the answer is 6/5 hours. Now the only time you really have to, you have a variation here is, let's say that we've got a hose filling a pool and a drain open in the pool. So if the hose can fill it in 10 hours and the drain can empty it in 15 hours, then what, and I would say, how long does it take to fill the pool? So you got water running in and water running out. How long does it take to fill the pool? It'd be a subtraction problem. It'd be 1 over 10 minus 1 over 15 equals 1 over x. Because they're not working together, they are working against each other. Does that make sense to you, that that would be a subtraction? Structured the same way, but it would be a subtraction. Okay. Now, didn't we do these percentage problems?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the setup for our percentage problems?
Amount times percent plus amount times
Amount times percent plus amount times percent equals amount times percent. So, we've got, all right, let's see. Okay, so I've got a 2-gallon jug of lemonade is 15% water. And he's gonna add pure water. How much pure water? Now, the lemonade he bought was 15% water. He's gonna mix it with pure water. So what's the percentage of pure water? 100. And he's gonna end up with 24% water. How much of that is he gonna have? 2 plus x. Kids, he had 2 gallons and he mixed it with x gallons. So he's gonna end up with 2 plus x gallons. I don't know if I did that right. 0.24 gallons. I don't know, is my arithmetic right? Does that look okay? Turn that paper over. There are a couple old quizzes. On the first quiz, number 2, what are the excluded values? It says don't solve it, just list the excluded values. What are the excluded values in number 2 on that old quiz down there? What? I'm looking at number 2, problem number 2, where it says name the excluded values.
Four and 4, 7.
Okay. I must be on the wrong page. No, I'm on the right page. I'm on the other side of the page we just did. Negative 5. Negative 5. 0.
Negative 6.
And negative 6. Those are the excluded values. Because those are the values that would make the denominator 0. One of your denominators is x plus 5, and one of your denominators is x times x plus 6. So negative 5, 0, and negative 6 would be your excluded values, right? All right, now let's solve some of these. Number 1. I'm going to go ahead and factor the denominator when I copy it. It's just a harder version of the work problem we did. 1 over loan plus 1 over loan equals 1 over together. This is just a harder version of it. What do I do? Multiply by x plus 4. Nothing cancels there, so I have 2x squared plus 8x. Minus 3x equals 12. Does that look okay to everybody? And what kind of equation is that?
Better.
So we get it set equal to 0, like terms, get it set equal to 0. I don't know if it factors or not.
It does.
It does.
2x minus 3x plus 4.
Can you double check that real quick? Yes, indeed. Good job. So my answers are 3/2 and negative 4. Beep, 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 beep. What about negative 4?
Can't have it.
Can't have it. You gotta pay attention to that, kids. You gotta be on the lookout for that. So the only answer is 3/2. Got it?
Yep.
All right, let's look at the next one, which is one of our inequalities. Who remembers the strategy here?
Move the 3 over.
Move the 3 over. Subtract it. And then what?
Where you find the common denominator?
Get a common denominator, yep, which would just be x minus 1. So I'll multiply this by x minus 1 over x minus 1. So now I have my fraction, 1 fraction. 2x minus 4, be careful here, minus 3x plus 3. Is that okay? Which simplifies to this. I know those look a lot alike, but nothing cancels. Please do not cancel. Nothing cancels. Okay, so now you've gone from here to here. Good. Now what? Draw a number line. You're going to put 2 dots on the number line, right?
1.
One's going to be a 1. The denominator dot is at 1, so it will be open. It is a denominator dot. You cannot have a 0 in the bottom.
And -1.
And -1. And that one we can close in, because you can have a 0 on top. Now what?
Test parts on the graph.
Yep, and actually, you don't have to test all the parts. This will alternate. There's nothing strange about the problem. If you want to test them all, you can, but you don't really need to.
Let's just try 0.
I'm just going to put 0 in, and when I put 0 in, I'm going to get a negative over a negative, which is positive, which is what I wanted. So that works. That won't and that won't. So my answer is everything between -1 and 1. In interval notation, that would look like that, right? Okay, one more. That last quiz question. What are you going to do with that one? It's another inequality.
Set it equal to 0.
Get a 0. You always want to get 0. That's right.
Factors.
It clearly factors.
Just say it's 1.
Sounds like a broken record. I'm going to draw my number line. Put a couple dots on the number line. Where will those dots be? -1 and 8. That's what makes these 0, right? Just like you put dots here and here, because that's what made it 0. Same principle. Nothing weird about this problem, so I'm going to check one space. Maybe I'll do 0 again. If I put 0 in, remember, this time I'm looking for negative, right? If I put 0 in, I get negative times positive. Does that work for me? Yep. So my answer is everything between -1 and 8. Remember, if they got radicals or square roots or anything like that, you have to check every space. Bailey? Okay. All right, in your packet, there is a sheet called Review 2.6 to 2.8. The first problem says, let me make sure it's like the first problem last one. The first problem says, what is a domain? So it's called Precal A, Review 2.6 to 2.8. First problem says, what is the domain? Anybody find it? That's your homework tonight. Try to follow the directions. The whole first part, the handwritten part, is no calculator. And then starting with number 7, it is with a calculator. All right? So here's what I need you to do tomorrow, and you have this done by tomorrow, but then I need you to kind of gather up all the questions that we haven't had time to answer and bring those in too, so we can work on those homework questions and this guy right here. Got it? Okay. You check? Yep. Yes, indeed. It is Thursday.
Move this forward. When is it mean when it asks for the domain? Is it just like finding all the x values
Mhm.
of